Real Talk with Grace Redman features conversations with fierce and fabulous people from Grace's community and circle who inspire others with their stories of overcoming challenges to create amazing. Grace is an entrepreneur and success coach who works with individuals to diminish their negative mental chatter, boost their confidence, achieve their goals, and increase their prosperity mindset. Get ready for a series of anything goes conversations with remarkable men and women that will get you jazzed for life's unlimited possibilities of success, freedom, and fun. Welcome to Real Talk with Grace Redman.
Hey loves, it's Grace Redman and welcome to Real Talk today. Thank you so much for joining us. I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people like Tiffany, and Tiffany Totah is my guest today, and I'm super excited to tell you a little bit more about Tiffany before we get started. All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, Grace.
Right.
Thank you.
So Tiffany is a facilitator and trainer with over 10 years of experience in corporate human resources, where she's interviewed, recruited, trained, managed, and coached managers on performance issues and professional growth. She also has her master's degree in counseling, and in the last 17 years, she's been empowering clients and colleagues in her professional practice. She's worked on joint ventures between mental health organizations and school districts, and Tiffany is passionate about the human aspect of her work, which defines an inclusive, accessible training approach. She understands that what motivates change in behavior. Her proven methods produce positive outcomes and working with a wide range of professionals, levels, and dispositions, enhancing the performance and confidence of individuals, executives, teams, and organizations. She keeps her approach simple and relatable with a positive personality and good humor, which I love about you. So I always make it fun and funny. So
wow,
welcome,
you, Grace.
Girl.
Oh man, thank you. Sometimes I'm listening to it like, who's she talking about?
But I'm so excited because we get to do this in person.
I know.
On the couch, conversations on the couch.
That's right. Keeping it real.
Yeah. So I appreciate, you coming to hang out with me today. Actually, I'm coming to hang out with you.
I love it. Hang out anytime. Anytime.
So, I remember when you first started your career in human resources, I actually came to you for some support, when we were just, young girls, and I knew that you were, in human resources. I'm like, I needed some direction, and I came to you. And then years later, I find out that you're going to transition into counseling. So I'd love to find out what motivated you to move from human resources into the counseling piece.
So interesting. So at the time I was a high overachiever, real young. And I had gotten my first master's degree, I was 21 and working full-time.
So young.
Working full-time. And basically what happened, and I was in human resources, I was HR manager for an airline service company, managing like over 3,000 employees. Like it was quite an experience. And
you were so young.
I was super young. And
at 21, I had
my
head up my ass.
I wish I had my head up my ass. I wish it would have been more exciting and more fun. Now I have my head up my ass.
Me too.
So basically, I burnt out, and I had, to be honest with you, I had like a nervous breakdown, and which led me into really questioning, what are you doing with your life? Like, you are working 70, 80-hour weeks. You're not going out and having fun and doing what other young adults were doing at your age. And I left the country. I just took off and I went to Spain, and I was there for a year. And that's where I was like, oh, this is living.
What was that like when you say this is living? Like, what were you doing?
I was going to clubs. I was dancing. I was going to bars. I was like,
having fun.
I was traveling. I was like, I don't know, just sitting in a pool, doing absolutely nothing. And that was a very good experience for me to awaken within me that there was something outside of work. I come from a culture where and I came from a family where my father was a workaholic. So I was modeling that if you didn't work hard, you were considered lazy. So the Spain experience brought me back to the United States. Old habits die hard. So I went back into human resources and just felt completely unfulfilled. HR had changed a lot. It wasn't about connecting with employees. It was now matrix and data and, efficacy and all these things. It's fine.
So it's more disconnected than connected.
More disconnected. And then you had to watch what you say and watch what you do. And everything just kind of shifted. And anyway, long end of it, then I left the country again and I went to Argentina. In Argentina, I just started teaching English as a second language. And in doing so, I found that people would really just talk about their feelings, talk about their life. I don't know if I was the safer person because I was this, as they say, extranjera, this foreigner from another country. And I found that I was able to hold this space. And they talked about me having this capacity to just like be able to help them to feel better. I think that's always been true for me, even as an HR person. So then when I came back from Argentina, got back into HR again, working for a startup.
Like you said, old habits die hard, which, we know that.
It was like letting go of a bad boyfriend. I just kept going back to what I knew.
Well, that's the thing, what we know. We go back to what we know, what feels safe.
That's right. And then I worked for a startup, and this startup experience absolutely destroyed me. Destroyed my mind, my body, my being. I was
what about it? Just like what was going on?
I was working in an environment with individuals who just were not in alignment with who I was. They weren't in alignment with my values. There wasn't a mutual respect. The harder I worked, the less I received. It was like the more I did, the more I gave. The less crumbs I received.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about that before, kind of in general.
Yes. Oh, I was the queen of crumbs.
Girl,
you gave me a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll work even harder.
Ditto, me too, because I think we have similar, cultural experiences.
That's right, where you just accept the crumbs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because your original question, how did you get into counseling? Well, interestingly enough, at my worst point in my life was after that startup. I was completely broken, lost. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? During that time, I said, oh, I'm going to teach. I've always wanted to be a teacher ever since I was 10. And then my parents were like, oh, teachers, no, it's like one of the most noble professions. You're
totally.
Like, what? It's not business.
I used to love, like, I was the oldest of 5. So I'd always get my siblings in the room downstairs and I'd want to teach them. Like, I want to be a teacher too. So
I love that. Yes. Yeah. I was totally like that too. Although I played the principal.
I love it.
So
the leader from the blood from the beginning.
I guess so. So, that led me to looking at teaching credentials. Even though I had a master's degree, I had to like redo the teaching. I had to get another bachelor's. It was just like a long process. But I needed classroom experience.
And what were you teaching at this point? What were you going to get the credentials to teach? Or could it be anything?
Anything. I wanted to work with adolescents. That was like my jam. Like I have a total inner teenager within me and I love.
Good. I'm glad you do. Like makes my life fun.
I love working with adolescents. So ultimately I ended up in a classroom that was a joint mental health education classroom with the County of San Mateo and the San Mateo Union High School District. And I was working as a teacher's aide and working with youth who struggled with either mental health, emotional issues. Mm-hmm. And from there, I was working with 2 who are still very good friends of mine till today, 2 therapists and then some teachers. And then the therapists were like, you are so good with the kids. You just naturally know how to help them ground. You give them so much. And the things you say to them really resonates and they're drawn to you. Forget about teaching. They were like, you should become a therapist. Wasn't even on my radar at all.
Do you think that was that like a light bulb moment when they said that to you? Did something go off for you?
it was sort of like, well, let me look into it. And the lazy person within me was like, and I don't like to use the word lazy, but the practical, I guess, person within was like, teaching credential, it was going to take me like, 5 or 6 years by the time or I could just, get a counseling degree, a second master's, and be done within 3. And then of course the hours in the licensing. So I'm like, which road do I want to go down? Let me go the easier
academic fruit.
Yeah, I was like, let me go with the academic, easier academic route. And within my counseling program, I was like, what is this? Like, it was pretty
in the intensity.
It was intense, and people that typically work in the field of mental health, like, sorry guys, aren't exactly the most healthy and integrated folks.
Interesting, because
there are plenty of great therapists. Okay, there are plenty of great therapists. However, there's a lot that aren't.
And there's a lot of great coaches and a lot that aren't too.
So that was my first introduction to the field. Got through graduate school, and then I was still working as a teacher's aide, and then I was able to get an internship at the juvenile hall in San Mateo, and then that was the rest. Then the rest was my career. I just loved it. Loved working with the kids. And that was the kind of the journey, the trajectory of my career. It was sort of multiple dark nights of the soul, multiple going back to what I knew, and which led me to a career today that I feel so blessed for, so grateful for, so fulfilled. I cannot articulate the evolutions even within that.
And I want to get to that because you just mentioned a few, so many dark nights of the soul.
Oh, plenty.
So tell us a little bit about that, what that looked like, and maybe how you got, I know we all go through many dark nights of the soul, but what did that look like for you initially, and how did you move through that? And maybe if you want to explain what a dark night of the soul is, if for some people might not know that term.
Well, I can only speak to my understanding of within the context of my own dark night. It's a period of time where I felt lost. It was a time where I couldn't find joy. I was engaging in behaviors that weren't serving me, whether it was re-engaging with partners that were just completely...
I know nothing about that.
Completely just getting it, taking all of whatever I had and just putting into toxic relationships or toxic people. And then it was like the universe just kept pushing me, like, take a look at this. Why are you, take a look, find that love within, why do you keep going back to these environments where you wanted something, you wanted to be seen, you wanted, and it just, and I wasn't getting it. It was sort of like the universe was like, hey, pay attention. And so the dark night of the soul was where I was literally like, who am I? What is my identity? It was a questioning of everything I knew, everything I was taught, everything that I thought I stood for, right? Just being, it was like the feeling, and then there were different dark nights. It was either I was totally revved up, work, right? Just doing more and more of the same. And then there was times where I just didn't want to talk to anybody or say anything. It was, I just wanted to crawl into a hole, and I just did enough to, because I was raising my daughter I just had enough energy for her and raising her.
I can relate to that too. Like you said, it's like the dark night of the soul. It's where, for me, it felt like same thing. Like I didn't want to get up and I didn't want to move forward, but I had young kids and I had to. And I've also had many dark nights of the soul, starting from when I was a teenager, which I didn't know what it was. And then, sometimes I still have it. Now I know how to manage it differently.
Yes.
Would you say, for me, I know my dark nights of the soul pushed me to my spiritual path. Would you say that your dark nights of the soul kind of pushed you on the spiritual path? Because you hear that nudge. And for me, that nudge, now that I look back, I mean, when I was heavy in it, I didn't know what that nudge was. But now when I look back, I feel like that nudge was spirit, God, universe, angels. It was a power greater than me.
Oh, absolutely. I have always been connected ever since I was very little. I just remember nature as always being the teacher during moments where I felt very sad, you know, looking up at the sky or walking to the ocean, and looking at the waves and then finding that peace. The dark, yes, absolutely. So to answer your question, every dark night of the soul when I haven't resisted it.
Well, oh, now we got a big word there, resist. Like resistance.
Now when they come, it's like, okay, don't resist it. You're elevating as a spirit. You're elevating as a person. You're elevating.
Yep.
And so, but before, I felt so grateful to the people who came just randomly on my path, introducing me to a book, introducing me to a healer, introducing me to a therapist, or there were always, you know, what are the angels on earth,
for sure,
who were there at the right time, guiding me to this next step to kind of take a look.
I totally believe that. I believe each person comes in, or whatever we need in that moment, we may not realize it at that time, but like you said, an angel comes. You know, it could be a person, it could be a situation, an event, but it's there to lead us to the next step.
That's right.
And I feel like sometimes when we're kind of shut down and not aware, we don't even realize, like, wait a second, that's leading me to where I need to go next.
Yes. And I think every time I've gone through a dark night of the soul, it's taught me to just trust the universe and trust the process, and to let go of control. So the more I try to control and resist, the harder it was. It just either extended it longer or the lessons got deeper.
Right.
And I call that, you know, the cosmic 2x4. And I'm like, forget it now. Now, if there's like even a tap, like a little twig, I'm like, I hear you.
Right. I'm going to make a change.
I'm going to make a change, or I'm going to change a thought or a behavior, or take a look at like what's going on in my life that these things are happening, and I catch them so much earlier. So I can say that it's truly through the dark nights of the soul that actually where the majority, if not all, of my expansion has come from.
I can say that the same for me. I recently experienced a mini dark night of the soul, and I could feel the pain like in my body, but I was also aware to know that, you know, one of my triggers or wounds was coming up, that I had to deal with. And like you said, like I knew, okay, like if I feel this and deal with it, I'm going to, you know, elevate, level up to the next level. So I think that was the first time, you know, in my life that I actually just allowed myself to feel it and not try to distract myself with, you know, all the things we distract ourselves with. And it actually moved pretty quickly, like within 2 weeks, not like I was in that pain for 2 weeks, but within 2 weeks, it kind of moved away. And then I felt like so much better.
I love that, because you felt what you needed to feel. And I think one of the mantras is like, you got to feel it to heal it.
And that's something you always say.
I always say that. And what else do they say? You got to name it to tame it. And I don't think, and with all the positive psychology and I call, you know, the toxic positivity, I do think positivity has its place, but unless you can address underneath. And I was the queen of positivity. I was like, light, love, embrace everyone's beautiful nature. I see the, you know, the spirit in you. And I did all that. And that's where, and I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but when you are attracted to toxic people, or when you are constantly looking at the positive of situations and not really addressing, like, I wasn't addressing what was underneath all that gunk of my self-worth. And I was like, wait a minute. And I remember a therapist once said to me, you know, Tiffany, your spirituality is disserving you. And I was, because I kept saying, well, they're a human, you know, that they're a spirit, they're a child of God. Like, let me, the more love I can give them, you know, I have to just trust that they're going to change. And no.
So so I've learned like I can be positive and loving and send out love, but it doesn't, and I can set my boundary. So it doesn't mean, although sometimes it's hard for me to stay loving, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be loving, but I don't need that person in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like you, I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, like you said, it's a child of God, and you just keep making excuses.
They're wounded.
That's people pleasing.
That's right.
So I was a people pleaser.
So was I.
Sometimes I still can be, but
I was a positive toxic positivity people pleaser.
And yeah, me too. You don't want to upset a person because then you're going to look like you're bad. But then you're doing a disservice to yourself by keeping these toxic people in situations, in our lives.
Yeah.
So now how would you say you handle difficult feelings? Because we're human, we're going to experience, good emotions, not so good emotions, and there's no right or wrong, but how do you move through the difficult feelings?
So it depends on the difficult feeling. If it's a trigger that I have been working on for a long time, when I'm feeling, I'll experience it more like discomfort. I was like, like you reading my bio. I was like, okay, trigger I've been working on. So, I can hear people like talk about like what I've done, and
I hear you.
It's okay to take it in. So that was a trigger.
I hear you.
It was uncomfortable. I was able to move through it by breathing.
Breathing helps
and
us.
Staying present and acknowledging within myself, like, Tiff, you have done those things.
Yes.
And can you just allow you to have this experience?
Mm-hmm.
The more difficult things, the more difficult emotions, I tend to get very upset still till this day. I'm getting better around like injustice, or if I see other human beings being hurt, I tend to be very vocal and cranky. And so I will either express it by venting to a friend, just kind of going off, because that somehow
it feels good.
It does. However, I could feel it in my body that it's like very intense. So I'm trying to mitigate that. But usually I'll vent. I'll write it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll maybe write like a social media post, or I'll write some kind of note, or I'll journal about it, and then it will diffuse it.
So what it sounds like you do, there's a few different things that you do is just kind of get it out of your body. Like with the breathing, it kind of, you blow, not that you're blowing it out, but you're releasing it. With the writing, you're getting it out. So, and I think that's important whenever we're feeling, some way, we want to feel it, and also find a few different ways to release it. And I think Tiffany kind of offered several great ways to help move through those feelings and release them.
And if I'm feeling very emotionally dysregulated, that's where I'll exercise. Like I will go for a run or go for a walk.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah, because you say, well, Tiff, just meditate. When I'm dealing with a difficult emotion, I'm like, no, that's not a good one for me. I have to literally release it from my body, and then I'll be able to
shift the state,
shift it to a more mindful state. But one thing I absolutely do not do, that I've done my whole life, which I don't think I've done in the last 10 years, I will not negate my feeling. If I'm pissed off, I acknowledge, okay, you're pissed off right now. Feel pissed. I'm feeling very sad right now. And I'm like, feel the sadness and feel it for as long as you need to feel it. If I'm grieving, grieve. So also with the difficult emotions is I absolutely do not ignore them, as I did most of my life.
And I appreciate you for something that you taught me, because I'm really quick to, like, when I feel it, okay, I felt it and I want to move on. And you've taught me, like, no, go back. It's okay. Like, you can sit with your grief or your sadness or you're pissed off, like sit with it. You don't have to get rid of it so quickly, because, I like to move to a higher state, but then doesn't benefit me, because then it comes back. So I appreciate you teaching me, like, to just really honor it and sit with it a little bit longer than I'd like.
Just a little bit. And that's something I do with my clients. Like, what would it be like to just sit in your pain?
And I read somewhere, I don't know from who, they said, if you sit with it for 90 seconds, I think it was Gabby Bernstein. If you sit with it for 90 seconds, just sit with it and feel it. Next thing you know, it'll start, moving through you. So I should try that next time.
Yeah. Well, you know, 90 seconds, an hour, 6 hours, I don't know. It really just depends on the person, but difficult emotions are an indicator. And I've always said this, like they're an indicator that something is not in alignment
For sure.
within you, within your life, and so we tend to invalidate negative emotions for whatever reason. Like I know I came from a culture where our emotional range was very limited. You couldn't be too happy. You couldn't be too sad. You couldn't be too angry.
It was like confusing.
Yeah. You just had to like the emotional range was like about like this. And so it took me, I had to feel some pretty extreme emotions on both sides in order for me to find a middle ground to say, oh, okay, it's okay to feel this angry.
Yes.
It's like giving myself permission to feel that angry. And I do that in all my clinical work, where just sit with it. Now, do we stew in it? Do we let it ruminate?
That's the difference.
No,
right there.
that's not how I'm not everyone's cup of tea as a counselor. I'm like, okay, we'll sit in it. But if there's like this rumination or this idea of that I am a victim to these circumstances. And yes, in some cases, horrible things have happened to people, and say, okay, yes, but how can we move to a place of empowerment? And it's really in those difficult emotions that we're able to move through to a place, because what is it? You can't get to the light until you embrace the shadow.
That's true.
I can't remember who said that.
That's true.
Yeah. And so that's I think how I've gone through it. And support. I think support is
huge.
Just having my tribe of folks that I go to help me process what I may be experiencing. And then of course I do everything from Reiki, energy work, you name it.
Ditto.
I've probably done it.
Ditto. And I think for me, as I look back now, one of the most important things for me on my journey, as Tiffany mentioned, was the support. But it's funny, early on in life, I didn't see it that way. Or, when I was a teenager or in my 20s, because it was in my mind, I was conditioned to believe if you sought help or support, you were weak. But in reality, it's very important. I think that's number one thing. If you're going through a dark night of the soul or struggling with something, the most important thing is find support. And of course, be discerning, and you want to feel safe with it. But there's nothing wrong with, reaching out and saying, hey, I don't feel good, or I need some support.
That's right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a clinician. It could be a spiritual person. It could be a religious, anything that calls to you to get that support. But I think, where do we usually go when we're feeling crappy? We'll go to the food. We'll go to the addictive behavior. We'll call that sweetie that you really shouldn't be calling, right? Because you're trying to, or retail therapy or gambling or drugs or alcohol, because you're feeling that pain. You don't want to feel it. You're uncomfortable. And let me mask it with all these other things and distractions. And I think the beautiful thing about COVID has it really got people, no distractions, to like really dive within. And I've done some of the most incredible clinical work during this time, because it really gave folks an opportunity. Where am I at in my life? And it's been amazing.
Yes. That could be a whole nother podcast. Girl.
Absolutely. Yes, girl. I could talk about that forever.
I love that. Well, we'll have you on again, because I would love to cover that topic. So how do you give yourself permission to kind of let go of those toxic relationships that you talked about?
How do I give myself permission? In the past, to be honest, it was like, there was no, it was like they reached a point where it was just so egregious and so toxic that I had to save myself. Whether I lost every dime I had, whether I was so depressed, I couldn't, like the achiness in my bones. I just I couldn't function. I felt lifeless, where I was like, okay, are you going to let this go now? Are you going to just let it go? I think now I have to say, I don't have toxic relationships in my life. I'm very grateful because I've pretty much like have let go of all the relationships that drained me. So, but how do I give myself permission was really to always put myself first, to say, okay, where are you at in this? Are you getting, is it a reciprocity? Is it a one-way relationship? It truly is. It's not only giving myself permission, but finding acceptance that that relationship is just not in alignment with where I'm at, or finding acceptance that that individual's limitations, no matter how much love or no matter how much I give, they're just limited. And can I find acceptance around their limitations and then move on? Now, if they're a parent or, you know, someone that again, it's finding acceptance and healthy boundaries.
Boundaries are huge.
Right. So, but it's really about going within. Where am I in alignment with that negative energy? Because there's a match there.
For sure.
What is happening within me that I'm tolerating that? So giving myself permission, but it's more self-reflection, being honest with myself, taking accountability, responsibility. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm engaging in that because I don't want to let it go yet. You know?
I could relate to that. Like I had to take accountability and like, okay, why do I keep attracting these situations, you know, into my life? And it went back, for me, it went back to the people pleasing. Like I wanted to be accepted and loved, and I wanted the relationship to work. So I would give and give and give. And then I would be, you know, depleted. It wasn't a two-way street. It was always a one-way street. And same thing. I remember I was in therapy, and she looked at me, she said, you've been coming here for the same thing for 20 odd years. And she said, you have a decision to make. And that decision is you are either going to choose yourself, save yourself, or you're going to perish in this people pleasing toxicity. And I'll never forget that, because I went home and I finally made the decision to choose myself. Now, it wasn't easy.
No. It's typically uncomfortable.
And I was shunned.
Yeah. Oh, of course you were shunned.
But I feel like having lost my mom when she was 50, I feel that that therapist in that moment, you know, saved my life, because she gave me a choice. Either you stay in the toxicity and you drown, kill yourself, or you choose yourself and you live. And your family. Like I was a mom and a wife.
That's right. And a question I always ask myself, like, okay, Tiff, what are you willing to risk to stay in this negative thought pattern or behavior that's not serving you, or in this relationship that completely drains you? Like, what are you willing to risk? What's your bottom line? And I think as time has gone on, and as I've gotten healthier, and as I've let go of a lot of these relationships, I'm not willing to risk anything for my joy, my happiness, my peace. So pretty much, I would say everyone in my life knows I'm going to put myself first. At this point, I'm not willing to compromise any of my inner peace for anything or anyone.
I agree.
I just won't do that.
I agree. And what I found when I do that, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to choose me. That's so selfish. Like, who does that? But then as I started to practice it, what I noticed was I felt more joy. When I felt more joy, I had more space. And when I had more space and energy, then I gave, because I had the energy. It wasn't like I'm giving for you to like me. I'm giving because I want to do this.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I love it. Wasn't it Marianne Williamson in A Return to Love, when she talks about being self-full?
Yes.
That as women,
I love that word that you used.
Right. Well, she used it. I was just like really thinking about, like, every time I'm doing something for myself, it's self-full.
Yes.
Even though I was conditioned to believe that it was being selfish.
Right.
And just like your experience, I totally found the same thing. I had more capacity to love. I had more capacity to give. I had more capacity to nurture. And the more I filled myself, the more I was able to do the work that I do and give to the people in my life in ways that I feel are meaningful and grounded, healthy, and connected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
It's coming from that place.
That's freedom, girl.
It's freedom.
I mean,
absolutely.
I never in my lifetime thought I could feel free. And it's the greatest, emotion I feel for me is freedom, the joy. It's priceless.
It is priceless.
So what would you say is one of your greatest accomplishments? Or if you want to share more than one?
I think one of my greatest accomplishments, I have to say, and I know this might sound so cliche, but it is raising my daughter.
That is not cliche.
It's like, oh, my child. Raising her, even though I'm a divorced woman, I had such a huge community around me, helping me raise her, which I'm so grateful for. It's like, it's like to do it alone. It's just not, I mean, you could, but it's so much better when you have support around you.
Exactly, like we talked about earlier.
Yes. Raising her, the reason why it's one of my greatest accomplishments, because for me, I was able to raise her connected. I was able, meaning grounded, teaching her meditation tools, teaching her that her feelings are okay, empowering her to be who she is, and really giving space, because I had a lot of cultural mess. Like, she was rambunctious little girl, and like was just running around and playing and having fun. And there was some cultural stuff that I was like, oh my gosh, her hair's not perfect. Oh my gosh, her clothes aren't like, perfect. That image. And that was one of my greatest accomplishments, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was able to clear all that perfectionism, to clear like letting her pick out her clothes and being, and it was because when I see her now and she's in her power, she's in her, it's not to say she doesn't struggle, but she moves through it. And I thought I'm raising, because I'm still a human being who is in her power, who I'm mindful of how she moves in the world. She's mindful about being kind to others. And then if she's not kind, to call herself on her own stuff. Like, I just raised a really cool person. And I thought, that's pretty great.
Yeah,
you went through multiple dark nights of the soul, and she's still functioning. Great job, Tiff. Great job.
that's. I think I've mentioned this before, but that's not cliche at all. I think, for me too, one of my greatest accomplishments is seeing, my boys, and that was one of the reasons. Like, I made the decision that I made to break, break cycles and choose me for my boys.
Yes.
And now when I see them, like, if I never ever accomplish anything again in my life, like, that was the greatest accomplishment. So So we're breaking cycles, girl.
Breaking the generational cycles. I love it.
So tell us something about yourself that's fun that many of us may not know or don't know at all. Yes.
You're putting me on the spot, Grace. Something that people don't know about or may not know. I absolutely loved musical theater, singing, karaoke. Musical theater was my passion. Yeah.
Oh, that's why I saw the karaoke, the carpool karaoke over there.
Listen, I had dreams of being like on Broadway. That was, growing up. As much as I wanted to be a teacher, I think I wanted to be in theater. I loved being in the theater. I still love being in the theater. Singing, musical theater.
I love it.
Yeah, Broadway stuff. Yeah. So
it's so fun.
It is fun.
And dynamic.
It is.
You could be whoever you want.
Yeah. So, and then character voice. I'm super silly. I don't know how people, if they know, like, I'm like really silly and embracing just being goofy and like voices and
I love it.
Characters and things like that.
So you bring an element of fun to your life and to the people you touch.
And I bring it into the therapy room too, because I think humor does have its place. And it's not to negate or minimize someone's experience, but bringing in that lightness, bringing in that lightness doesn't mean ignoring.
Right.
It's just you're saying sometimes life can be so tragic and so ridiculous that you just laugh.
For sure.
It's just crazy.
For sure.
So I think those aspects of myself, I will be back into musical theater. I know that.
I can't wait.
Yeah. When things are open, local theater.
How fun.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
That's definitely on my bucket list. Yeah. I'll let you guys know.
All right. So if our audience would like to get in touch with you, where can they reach you?
Yeah, sure. If anyone is looking for guidance on any mental health, or maybe some guidance on maybe if you're thinking about therapy, or if you want some direction around the process, I'll be more than happy to talk to you about that. So you can reach me at Tiffany, Tiffany, Totah, Totah, M as in Mary, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, @gmail.com. Feel free to email me, and I will do whatever I can to help guide in whatever direction you feel is needed, or for family members as well.
Thank you so much.
Grace,
that was so fun. I could have stayed here with you for hours.
Oh my gosh, that was fun. Thank you so much.
I look forward to
Grace.
having you on again, because there is so much that we can
thank
cover.
you, Grace.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
it.
And thank you to everyone who's listening in. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today on Real Talk. We're very grateful for you and look forward to connecting with you again the next time. Until then, keep creating your fun and fabulous. Take care.
Hey love, thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self-hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman, Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.